What do you think is the message that you want everybody to know?
That life is not happening to you, that it's happening through you. And it's not only what you believe of yourself, but what you believe to be true of others, that you truly are the author scripting out your life. And you no longer have to be the victim. Through unawareness to this knowledge, we have fell into the trap of believing that we are a victim in this world, that all these horrible things are happening. But as we awaken to this truth that we really are in control, we're not just this little tiny speck in the world, that we are creators, we are made in the image of God. It says, God is the creator of all things. His I am presence is who you are. So you have power. Be cautious of what you're believing to be true of yourself and of others, and watch your world change. Be intentional and master your focus. Someone who masters their focus, their thoughts, and their feelings, this is their greatest achievement. This is the greatest achievement that one can reach in this world.
I feel like that was a mic drop comment. My guest today is Lisa Everhart, who had an incredible near-death experience as a result of a suicide attempt. And in that experience, she had some pretty unusual things that I have not heard very many people talk about, and also had an experience with what she calls the Christ consciousness. So I'm excited to learn more. Lisa, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
So you had a pretty unusual near-death experience, and I thought from your description that you did a pretty good job of trying to end things for yourself. But apparently, you were meant to come back because no one dies before their time. So, will you want to share a little bit about what your life was like before you tried to exit the human incarnation?
Yes, definitely. My old story was a very sad one. I was looking for love in all the wrong places outside of myself. I was raised in religion. I was brought up to believe I am a sinner and that I need an outside love in order to be made whole. This was my upbringing, and we were very deep into that religion. It led me down the path, excuse me, it led me down the path of alcoholism, drug abuse, broken relationships, a failed marriage, losing custody of my children due to the alcoholism. I was very just lost. I still had something inside me that kept seeking, but never found. And I just got to my wit's end, and I decided that I'm done doing this. And I took pills, poison. I knew I was going to be alone for about 12 hours. And
And so that's what you decided, how you decided to do it. Well, you can share your near-death experience in any way that you feel like sharing it.
right. And so it led me up until that point of taking the pills and the poison because I knew that I was going to be alone for 12 hours without anyone to come in and resuscitate me of any kind. So it was about 8:30 in the morning on a Sunday morning. And the first thing that I can remember and recall after taking the pills and poison was kind of going into this black space. There was I couldn't see me, I couldn't see anything in front of me. It was just black. Everything was dark. How long I was there, I do not know. Um, and then the first thing that I remember was I was hovering above this body on a bed. I did not realize yet at this moment that it was my own body. I was still disoriented and just trying to make sense of things. Once I realized, like, "Ooh, I think that's me on the bed there," I saw my boyfriend at the time in the room standing above me. And I remember being carried out in a body bag. This is my perception of it. Later, when I spoke with my boyfriend, he said that I was carried out in a sheet. I perceived it to be a body bag. I don't remember being able to see anything above me. Then the next thing that I remember, I was in the hospital. So what happened in between all of that, I still to this day I do not know. But as I woke up in the hospital, I had tubes in my nose. I was hooked to IVs, and they were asking me questions. Do you know your name? Do you know why you're here? And I just remember feeling so heavy, the heaviest I've ever felt. And then everything went black once again. And then I saw brick building all around me. What once was the hospital room in which I was in was now this dark, dingy brick building. And there was two screens, a smaller one and a larger one, and it was hooked to me. And at this point, I was still laying there on this bed in this brick room, and I started to lean forward. And as I leaned forward, I started to come out of the body, but I was still connected to these two tablets. So it was connected somehow to my spirit form. And as I started to move forward, I started to glide. And I had realized at this point, something's going on. I'm not in my body. I'm going through walls. And little by little, I was starting to understand and remember what had taken place. So I started to move and I glided through this big sliding glass door, and it led outside to this beautiful green like garden of some sort. There were two trees, and the two trees were exactly parallel to each other and about 12 feet apart. And I felt the gravity pulling me towards going up this tree. Why I felt called to go up it and why I was being pulled towards it, I don't know. But I did try to go up this tree and I was unable to do so. So I glided over to the other one to my left and I was able to go up it. I started to glide up this tree and it transformed into this tree house of some sort. And there was a television, a very large television screen, and there was static going down it. And as I started to kind of tune into the sound of the static and kind of be mesmerized by the TV, I woke up again in the hospital. And this time, as I woke up, I could hear only, couldn't really see, it was really foggy. I was trying to open my eyes, but I couldn't. But I could hear, she's seizing, and there's no sign of brain activity on the monitor. And I remembered like my body kind of convulsing, shaking like incredibly fiercely. And I felt like my body was ripping in half almost. And as that feeling just got more intense and more intense and more intense, I woke up again in that brick building. And I rose up out of this body laying on the bed once again, still attached to these two tablets. And this time I went the opposite way than I had gone previously. It was to my right. As I started to glide down this hallway, it was very dim, like a yellow lighting. Um, there's two individuals, and this really stood out to me. There's two individuals that were alive in my reality at that time, named Stephanie and Brittany. And these two individuals could not see me, but I could see them. And I just kept gliding by them. And when I glided by them, almost like I think it was like kind of through them. So they were standing like this, and I just went straight through in between them. And I went back outside. And as I went outside this time, I had like this glow, this red ball of some sort that was attached to me. And this ball, it was like I couldn't let go of it. It was like this orb of some sort. And I woke up once again in the hospital. This time, I was unable to open my eyes. I was unable to really hear distinctively what was going on in the room. It was like muffled almost. And I felt that heavy feeling consume me once again, and I fell back under. This time, when I woke up, I was under dirt, and this dirt was like all over me, and it was like almost like anxiety filled because I'm like, I couldn't move. And then I realized dirt was coming off of me. And as I started to lean forward with all my might, the dirt started falling off more and more. And directly in front of me was a cross. And then to my left was a cross. And to my right was a cross. And then I felt this pulling like I did towards the trees. And it was leading me up to this big rock. And this rock transformed into this cave. And as I glided into this cave, I became aware that there were skull fragments all around on the ground as I continued to glide into this cave. And as I continued, I then realized that there was mirrors everywhere because I was seeing there was a little bit of light in there and I was seeing the light reflecting on all these different angles. And then as I moved in more and there was more light, I saw this fiery serpent and it was the only reflection in the entire cave. And as I got close to the mirror and I was realizing that it was my own image, that it was my own self that I was seeing. And um, instantly, from that moment when that hit me, I turned into this black tar substance, and a baby in an incubator was floating directly in front of me. If I had a body at this time, I would have been cradling it like in my arms. That's about where it was. And left confused, just kind of looking at this child in this incubator, I woke up once again in the hospital. At this point, I was able to wake up fully for 10, 15 minutes. They were asking me questions. I was still very weak at this point. Um, I was able to answer some questions though. And I remember closing my eyes, and this is when I had the heavenly vision. This beautiful being came into the room and long, flowy hair, beautiful green olive eyes, tan skin, just gorgeous, gorgeous man, with a white attire on and a purple sash. And then without saying anything, it was like this look, like this smile, you know, almost like not a mischievous, but just this little slight grin. And we merged together and we shot up out of the room, out of the building, out of the universe. As we were going through the sky, I could feel the clouds on my face. I could feel the vortex speed that we were going. And we flew directly into the sun. And I could feel the extreme heat for a brief moment. But I did not feel pain, but I did feel the heat. And as we entered into the sun, I saw all of these beautiful flowing rivers with large mountains. And on these mountaintops were these emerald, ruby, gold, silver buildings on top of them. And we flew to the very, very top one. And as we entered into this building, this is like the only thing that was really shown to me while I was here. And it was so profound. There's two children sitting side by side in two different chairs next to each other, two screens directly in front of them, their eyes glazed over. What was playing on one child's screen was playing on the other child's screen, and vice versa. But they were experiencing only their own perception of what it was they were seeing. And I knew in that moment that thoughts create the world around us. And I heard, "You are a messenger." And language was not used like how I'm speaking now. Everything's telepathic. And it was heard. I heard it in a male voice. And from that loud ringing in my ears, "You are a messenger," I felt the embrace of unconditional peace and joy and love, kindness, all the great feelings that one can hope for. I felt, and it felt like an eternity that I was in that embracing. And then I felt the shock, just like this jolt. And I just woke up in the hospital, and that's my complete experience of my NDE.
Wow. So many questions. So what's interesting, Lisa, to me is that I've done a lot of these interviews now, and there is an aspect of an NDE that is very different. When someone just has a straight NDE, they die, like they're in a car accident and they go to the other side, versus they're in a situation where their body is almost like in a coma and they have a very different type of NDE in this sounds very much like a coma-like experience in the hospital. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you understand this? Can you explain a little bit about this? Because it is a very, very different type of NDE.
Yes, and I'm glad that you brought this up. Is because this whole this whole time that this is going on was over the course of 3 days.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was a prolonged, I remember when they reached out to my mother and they said she's finally come to, and my mom was like, "What? What's going on?" It was 3 days after the day that I'd taken the pills and the poison. So it was like I was fighting. I guess this body was fighting for life. And that explains the going under. And at times I could hear what was going on in the room, but I had no sight. So I don't know if I was in a coma, you know, type of situation. I don't know that part, but it would make sense because there was several times that I could recall where I could only hear and I could not see until I had come out fully of the body. Then that's when I had vision, and it was not in the previous hospital room. It was in a completely different, my perception, different dimension.
I think the part that seems the most different about these types of NDEs that are with that coma-like experience is that you have fragmented experiences of the NDE. So like in one, you had that tree experience, then you had the orb experience, and then you had the dirt and the cave experience. And it's almost like you got to bring back pieces of it, but it's almost like you're missing some of the in between because it just doesn't come back as a fluid memory the way that somebody is like car accident and they're just gone,
Yeah,
where their
yeah,
body's still struggling and waking up and you're waking up and coming back. And it just so these are so fascinating. I feel like NDEs are as unique as people are unique.
yeah, most definitely. And I know that my experience is quite different.
It is, but I love this because all of these add another piece to the puzzle. They all help us understand these things better and what consciousness is and maybe how things are on the other side. So I want to go back to the first experience you had where you had those trees and the trees turned into the tree house. Do you have any idea what kind of trees they were? Were they like a tree that you would see here, or were they different than any trees that you had ever seen before?
So I became obsessed with looking at trees after this
I
experience.
love trees so much.
And, the closest replica that I could find on the internet, it looks like they were fig trees.
Oh, interesting. Fig trees are very beautiful. Their leaves are usually a little bit bigger and they're not as a tall, big tree, but they're usually a wider tree, are they not?
Yes, and so the trees were very large, but the branches started um, very low, like
Yes.
it was very low. So when I went up, it was like I was going almost one with the tree, trying to go up that tree. But the branches, they were very low.
So the tree house itself, can you kind of describe a little bit about what that looked like, felt like?
So it was like a morphine. It was just I can't really even explain it. It was just like it churned into this platform, and it had walls. It was like a room, but there was nothing. It was a very bare room. It was just like a white walled room, and there was just one TV in the room and a chair,
And
and
you
that
said
was
static was playing on that TV, correct? There
yeah.
wasn't anything else you saw. What do you think that TV represented? Because when you first said it to me, the first thing I think of is a life review, except not if there's static on it, unless you weren't meant to see anything.
Yeah, so why there was static the first time, I'm quite unsure of that, really. I mean, I've dissected my NDE pretty good, and I have a lot of deep understanding on the majority of it. Um, but I have yet to find a symbolic meaning for the static. Um, but I do know that the second time that I saw the screen, that there was many individual little clips, and I
You
knew
mean
that
when the two girls were looking at it?
um, when I was looking at it, and there was a little glimpse of all
Oh,
the
so you saw that you saw it more clear with the little blips on it. Was that more like a life review then?
So in a sense, it's pretty close. It wasn't like I was reviewing each scene. It was like in an instant, I knew that they were all lives I had lived, am going to live, or was currently living. And how I knew that, it was just like, I guess, wisdom given to me in that moment because that didn't align with any beliefs leading up to this moment.
Right. If you're religious, you have one life. You don't even have a multiple more than one and done. This
There's
is
no
so
coming.
fascinating, Lisa, because I did recently interview another NDEer who had experiences, and she was taken and shown outside of herself living another life. And she felt that they were all happening at the same time. So will you shed a little bit of light on this part of it? Because this is definitely a more different aspect than we normally get to hear in an NDE.
So let me see if I understand the question correctly. What my beliefs are regarding if the past lives, future lives, and present lives are all happening at once.
Yeah, the happening at once part.
So the all the lives happening at once in my perception of what it was that I was shown, when I say that it was a past life, it was like a past conscious awareness, and it was like I was shifting. I try to explain it the best that I can, but most definitely was happening all at the same time, all at the same time. Um, it was like kind of like a radio station, and you tune into a certain frequency, and then that is what you hear. You tune into another frequency, that is what you experience and hear.
But those other radio stations are still existing at the
All
same time, even though you're not tuned in. That's a great way
always,
to explain it.
yeah.
Do you
And
remember
that's
details of any of them?
of all the little clips that I was seeing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I remember that there was one of my children. There was one of my family um, mourning me, and I also had a vision of this a few weeks after this whole experience. So, and those are the three that I really was dialed into, and how I perceive this and why is because those were the ones that I was a, I guess, vibrational match to. So that is where my focus went. That's how I perceive it.
So when you say you were a vibrational match to that, can you elaborate on that part a little bit more?
Yes. So when I saw those three that stood out to me the most, the family mourning me, which I was in a vibrational alignment to death, not wanting to go on anymore. The one in the hospital, still a little bit a part of me had that seeking and wanting answers of life. A little bit when I took the pills, I was fearful and I was almost, after I had done it, did I do the right thing? So I was in alignment to that one. And then, of course, the one that I was laying lifeless on the bed, I was a complete match to because, that was my current reality that I just stepped out of. So I think that is why, out of all of them, I do remember seeing myself that looking different even too, but my focus like redirected into these three that I just mentioned, and that's why I believe is because of my match to that, my alignment to it.
How many do you think you were concurrently living?
Well, with my understanding now, I think all of them, and that is just because of how my beliefs are with consciousness. I believe that everything's happening now. All versions of me are being lived now, and I'm tuned into this reality of Lisa. Say you know, I put my focus elsewhere and I use my imagination to shift. I know with certainty that I would shift into a different reality, different version, very similar to the one that we're now living, now speaking in, um, but slightly different.
Do you think they were all kind of like an Earth-like experience?
That's from my experience, that's all that I saw. Um,
Okay.
but my beliefs don't stop there. Just but what was shown to me in that moment was just Earth experiences.
So do you think that there's a quantity of lives that were being lived?
I do. This is aligned to my beliefs. Yes.
I mean, like how many? 15, 100?
Um, I've never really put a number on. I've never even really thought about it. Um, yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, are we all living like 100 lives, and are some, if there's some of them are at the same time, then it's possible that like I'm here and I'm me right now, but I'm also somebody else somewhere else in the world having a different experience with the consciousness that's there and also here. It's interesting to think about.
Yes, and as I dived into understanding the I am presence before this version of life was I am, and that is where everything in my NDE has led me to really study and embody and have a deeper understanding of self. I know with certainty these days that we are all one, and we have been fragmented into all these different versions. So you are me, I am you.
I love it. I believe that's been my experience on the other side as well. We're just a little teeny tiny drop having this incarnation, and we think that it's a contrast, but really, if you take that away, it's just all the same thing. We're all the same thing.
Yes, yes, and and that's, yeah, that's pretty aligned to my beliefs and understanding how to function and move through this world with that knowing, um, and taking away what I was shown in the NDE was that we're all looking at the same thing, the same background, the same video game outline almost, but we're only experiencing it through our own perception. And so this was really difficult for me to kind of let in, especially when you look around your world and you see that it's kind of a crap show. So it's really hard to accept that, like, wait, what just was shown to me, that I'm creating all of this, that everything that's brought agony to me is all being created from what I believe to be true of myself and what I believe to be true of others. And it took me a few years to really um, accept that. But the moment that I did, I played around with it, and I started to choose to see the people in my world differently, and they started to reflect that change. And
So
from
give
that
us an
moment,
example. This is fascinating because this is so in alignment with all the things that we're learning about thoughts being real and creating realities. I hear near-death experiencers come back and say this again and again.
so I will leave out the names of people um, that I did this with. But I saw this individual. We would always bicker, we would always fight, we were always at each other's throats, and that's how I viewed this individual. And as I looked back, I could not disprove that every thought I thought of this person was being, it was being reflected. So I said, okay, well, what if I just deliberately changed the way I viewed this individual and just stayed grounded and focused in that? And no matter how they showed up, I just stayed grounded and focused in this. And over a very short period of time, this individual started to mirror what it was I was envisioning, visualizing to be true of them. The conversations I was holding within my mind with this person to be more aligned to the way that I desired to see them. And it was, I believe it was 1 month where they actually started to conform to this new version. And they have never, to this day, have never gone back to the previous, because my assumption of them has not changed. Um,
What a crazy cool way to change the things around us that we view as in a judgment of, well, I don't like this, or I wish things were different. And it's one thing to wish things were different, but it's another thing to be able to influence it. So that leads me to another question, which is the free will part of it. And how does that tie in? Because that's a little bit of a slippery slope. And I love that you're going like this.
all right. So the two children sitting in the chairs side by
Yeah.
side, both looking at similar screens. They have the same, world background on these screens. However, their eyes were glazed over and they were having their own experience of life, completely different from the one sitting next to them. So there's the illusion they're sitting in the same world. They're sitting very close to each other. Through the illusion, they appear to be in the same world, but they are experiencing their own individual world. And that is what the perception is. So
So do you think you were shown that on purpose because they were trying to show you how the perception influenced the outcome? Were those two boys that were sitting in the chair, were they the same boy just with a different perception, or were they actually different?
so one looked just a little bit older.
Okay.
Why? I don't know, but one looked a little bit older. He was a little bit sitting up taller in his chair, but they were very close in age. They were both like probably in between 6 and 8.
Were they aware that they were both influencing their own world? What do you think you were seeing? Was this like an exercise in before we go to Earth? What in the world?
So this is the only thing, and I have replayed and deepened my understanding and saw that what was being shown symbolically, um, the children, who enters into the kingdom of heaven, children. So that's how what I saw, why there's children being shown. Their eyes were glazed over, and they were like tuned into their own screen. Um, and so they were perceiving their own world. But I knew what was playing on one, the background of it was playing on the other screen, and vice versa. So there was the illusion that they were in the same world. However, I knew that they were experiencing something completely different from the individual that was sitting next to them. So it appears we're in the same world, but we're experiencing our own world. The world is you pushed out. And that is, I found that a few years after my NDE with Neville Goddard. A lot of his work matches up so beautifully with what was shown to me in this NDE. And it aligns. And when I heard the words, the world is you pushed out, the world is your assumptions pushed out, I just stopped in my tracks like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is my confirmation. Now I know I have to go out and speak and tell what it was I was shown and how I understand it now. And that is when I started to share.
This is reminding me, and it's probably reminding people that are listening of that scene in the Matrix movie where he realizes that he is really not living in the Matrix. He is in this place where he's plugged in. Now, they weren't plugged in, but when you say that their eyes are glazed over and they're looking at that screen, do you think that there's a drop of each consciousness having that experience, or do you think this was more of a metaphor to help you to be able to take an idea and bring it back with you to share?
This is what I truly believe. I truly believe it was a symbolic message. It was wanting me to, what it did was it put me on the seeking, trying to understand, trying to see it from all different angles. What does this mean? I just knew thoughts create things, but I knew there was a deeper message than that, even though that was life changing in itself because it went against everything I had believed before. But as I started to look at it to find this symbolic meaning, it led me into seeing the symbolic meaning of my dreams, my life, um, the Bible, looking for the symbolic meaning in everything I read, everything I do. And when I started to view my world looking for the symbolic message, um, my feeling state started to change. I was no longer seeing things just at a surface level, but more looking through the surface level and um, seeing the spiritual message in things.
What a beautiful gift to be able to see the spiritual message behind all these things that we're going through. I would imagine once you've uncovered that your thoughts are truly creating the reality, and you had that experience you shared with us with your friend, how you tried to change how you saw that relationship. Can you give us another example of something where you've applied this to the thoughts and it's made a difference and it's different than it was for you before this experience?
Oh, most definitely. So going into the NDE, I was very ill. I don't know if I mentioned that. I had a failing liver. I was alcoholic. Didn't make good choices. And from a very early age, I was always in and out of the hospital with kidney issues. I would get kidney stones probably once a month, every other month. So I was always in a lot of pain. I was very overweight. I got up to about 100 pounds overweight, and I'm a very short girl. So this was leading up to that. And after I came back with this message, my thoughts are creating the reality. What I believe to be true of myself and others is shaping my experiences. Um, I just had this like a spirit within me, my higher self, I guess, calling me and saying, write yourself love notes, talk better to yourself, point out the positive things that you have done right, put your focus on that. And as I started to do these things, it led me then to meditation, which I didn't know what meditation even was, didn't even have any idea. And I just sat there in silence, silencing the mind so I could choose my thoughts. Later, I find out, oh, that's meditation. Then I did the breath work, just breathing through emotions so I wouldn't let the emotions dictate my thoughts. Then I learned that's breath work. So I'm doing all these things organically and applying positivity and loving myself. I really started to embody that self love. And when I truly did, liver failure, gone, kidney disease, gone. My body started to transform, shedding weight left and right. And the depression that had always been a battle in my life um, has been gone. It's never come back. I would used to have episodes where I'd be really good for a while and then boom, has not come back since this experience. And I know with certainty that it never will.
Wow, that's powerful. I know with certainty that it never will. Lisa, this is on the show what I call a gold nugget. You have this wisdom and you brought this information back and you've uncovered how things are different for you since your near-death experience. And I just heard you say that one of the things that you were directed to do was to write a love letter to yourself. So for the people who are watching, if they want to write a love letter to themselves, what does that look like? How do they go about doing something like that?
So I actually found out that what this is called scripting. It's a technique of Neville Goddard's. Another thing that I was doing organically, didn't know that it was an actual thing. But how it started for me was I would write, Lisa, I love you so much. You're doing the best you can. That was my first letter. It was something so simple like that. I wrote it on my bathroom wall or bathroom mirror. And so every time that I would go in and get ready for the day, I am seeing that it is going in. It was something so subtle like that. That was the first step that I took. Then I added on to that. The next day, I wrote another little short love note to myself. And as it expanded more and more, I had a whole book full of all these beautiful things. And anytime that I was going um, through feeling not accepted from my outer world, because that was something that I felt very lonely for a while because I didn't know how to speak what it was I went through. I would read this book to myself and it would give me peace. And it was just something so simple. Something so simple can be profound. It really does start with self love because if we do not love self, um, our world's going to be a reflection of that. So people are going to show up in our world not loving us, not respecting us, taking advantage of us. Why? Because we don't love ourselves and they're just playing the part that we are, um, creating them to be able to play by the lack of love that we have for self.
Wow, beautiful. Since I asked that question and you answered it so completely, so helpfully for people watching, I'm going to ask you the same thing about the breathing because I had an experience a couple of weeks ago. I almost never get sick, and I was on a plane. My friend was sick. I have a new puppy. She was petting it, and I feel like it was a combination of the stress of all of that, and I got sick, and I haven't been sick for like, it was my first cold since 2005. This is 2025. It's been a long time. And I was really mad at myself that I got this. And then I traveled and I had to go up and down elevations and it really affected my ears and it was bad. And I was going to bed that night and I felt like, oh my gosh, like I almost feel like I'm getting a fever. And in the middle of the night, I was awakened. I don't know by what. And I understood that if I did a certain breathing, that I would be mostly healed by the morning. And it was almost like seeing a lawnmower, like if there's a patch of grass and you mow it like this, and then you come back down and you mow it like that. I saw it and it was like the deepest, deepest breathing. And I swear to God, I woke up the next day and I was like 95% better. And I feel like when you said that about the breathing, it resonated very deeply with what I had experienced. Is this what you're talking about?
So I, what I call it, when it actually was taught to me, this language to call it, is sovereignty nervous system alignment. And it's when you breathe in very, very, very deep and you exhale with an audible sound. You do this 3 times, and then you're going to breathe in deep for 4 seconds. And then your exhale is going to be a little bit longer than your inhale. And you're going to breathe it all the way out. And then you hold this for about 60 to 90 seconds. This short little exercise is getting you in heart brain coherence. So when you have a thought, you're automatically going to intentionally create a feeling. So your thought, say, I am healthy, I'm full, I'm complete. You are going, because you're in coherence, what are you going to feel? What are you going to embody? Because the brain is in complete alignment to the feeling state. And the feeling state is what shifts us to states of consciousness.
This is so fascinating. I wonder now, I'm thinking I haven't really thought about this more, but I wonder if it happened to me during the sleep cycle because my brain couldn't turn off enough to discount what I was experiencing, which was a knowing, a clear cognizant knowing that I would wake up and be completely better. And if you had told me that from how I felt the night before, would have been hard for my human self in that condition to know that. Do you think that there was a connection?
Well, this is what I do know. When you have a strong belief, belief always wins. Always.
Belief always wins, positive or negative, right?
Yes. Doesn't matter if it's good, bad, or indifferent, it always will be experienced. So that's why I have to be very aware of what we believe to be true. But like you said, you knew with certainty, you knew that you were going to wake up feeling better. And that's what happened because you authored it.
I think this is so powerful. I hope everybody rewinds this and listens to what you're telling us again. All right, I want to go back to a couple more things that happened in your near-death experience. You had the red orb. What was that?
Um, so I know that the red is the root color, the root, if we're into vibrations and frequencies and chakras. Um, and that's all I've gotten for it. That's all.
Okay.
I don't
And
know
it was a
why
little blip, but I thought it was worth asking.
I think, and so now I'm actually just right now thinking this, that red, which reflects root, and I couldn't let go of it. It was almost like it was trying to ground me almost. That would be one way to view it.
Hmm.
Um, that's all I got about that. I don't know. There's still a little bit of fog around some of the things that I witnessed, and I'm sure in time that I will have a full, complete understanding.
Yeah, I bet you will too. Okay, the dirt. That's very interesting. Never heard anybody have that. But while you were saying it, it sounded like it was almost a spiritual cleansing that you were going through. What do you think about that?
So this is what I believe. I was in a grave of some sort in the ground, and I rose in front of the middle cross. This is a symbolic story being told because after I came out of this NDE experience, I was transformed. This bitter person, this sad person, this angry person, always wanting revenge, always feeling sorry for herself, was now choosing love, choosing to see the best in people, choosing to really just want to lift people up. It was a transformation in itself in just that. And that's why I really feel this was the symbolic story being told as Christ was on the middle cross. And I really feel that this is the symbolic story of me waking up to that Christ love within me.
Do you have people around you who started to very quickly notice the difference?
Most definitely. My husband, where we would fight all the time. We were no longer fighting, um, loving one another, laughing. Our complete relationship has just been completely restored. One, from the way I view him, and also because of self-love um, that I'm experiencing after this NDE. So yeah, definitely. And family members, friends, um, many people now are truly starting to see because I am just expanding more and more each day.
I believe that. I also feel happy to hear that you are still with your husband because so many times after people go through one of these experiences, they leave their relationships, they no longer serve them, they fall away. So it's beautiful, but I bet it has something to do with how you thought about him and how you probably created that too.
Oh, definitely. So he was my boyfriend at the time. We got married after the experience. Um, but it wasn't all beautiful at the beginning. I still had a lot of things to work through, and I had yet to realize at this point, I only thought it was my own thoughts of myself that was creating my reality. It had not really sunk in into a deeper level that it was also what I was believing to be true of others is how they show up. And so I would still kind of a little bit play that victim card, like, oh, I made this change. I'm growing, but you're not. And as I broke out of that binding, because that was a trap in itself, and I started to realize that, whoa, he's the way he is because of my own beliefs. I started to change my beliefs. He started to mirror the change, and the rest is beautiful history. We've grown closer, obviously, because I love him and I love me, and I know that I'm experiencing my perception of him, and I choose to see beauty within him instead of always looking for the negative like I used to.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, you also had an experience with the man in the white robe and the purple sash. Do you understand that a little bit better now too?
Yes. So how I see this, it is like because oh, how do I explain this one? Almost like the wisdom and power of the I am in body form. That is what I felt because as soon as we merged and we touched, it was this wisdom and this power just consumed me. And the power, of course, was felt through love and compassion and grace and all these great feelings. But there was an undeniable knowing that this individual was wisdom and power.
Wisdom and power. Okay, and then you had that experience in the sun and you saw the buildings and you said you went to the tallest one. And that was where you had that other experience. It's interesting because the sun seems to come up in a few of the NDEs. What was the sun?
Um, I, I, that one is still, I ask myself that sometimes too. Like, is that another planet? Is that what is um, running this whole natural conscious simulation of some sort? These are the questions that I ponder quite frequently. And why I went into the sun, if it was the sun, um, I don't know. I don't know for certain. So I won't try and explain or answer something I'm not 100% certain about.
Yeah, I understand that. Um, you said that you were shown, you understood, you knew that you had to come back and be a messenger for these things. So of all the things which are so powerful, like I'm so moved by your story, Lisa. What do you think is the message that you want everybody to know?
That life is not happening to you, that it's happening through you. And it's not only what you believe of yourself, but what you believe to be true of others, that you truly are the author scripting out your life. And you no longer have to be the victim. Through unawareness to this knowledge, we have fell into the trap of believing that we are a victim in this world, that all these horrible things are happening. But as we awaken to this truth that we really are in control, we're not just this little tiny speck in the world, that we are creators, we are made in the image of God. It says, God is the creator of all things. His I am presence is who you are. So you have power. Be cautious of what you're believing to be true of yourself and of others, and watch your world change. Be intentional and master your focus. Someone who masters their focus, their thoughts, their feelings, this is their greatest achievement. This is the greatest achievement that one can reach in this world.
I feel like that was a mic drop comment. Wow. Wow. Lisa, I don't have anything else that I can even ask you. Like my mind is swimming. I swear to you, I will be going back to your interview and listening to this again. One of the things that you just said, though, also really resonated heavily. A lot of people, including me, have been saying that life is happening not to me, but for me. But you didn't say that. You said life is happening through me. So I think that this will be my last question to you. What do you mean? Can you help us discern between the it's happening to you, it's happening for you, it's happening through you?
Happening to you is a state of consciousness of victimizing, victim being a victim. Happening for you is still believing that there's a power outside creating it for you. Freedom comes through the understanding that it's happening through you and that you have full capability of changing anything.
Wow. It's also something that I've heard people bring up before with the Neville Goddard, and I feel like now I need to go and look into that a little bit more. I don't know very much about him. I know he was around a long time ago. Like he's been talking about these things like before things like The Secret and all of those other concepts came to mainstream to the culture where people were talking about them. So I think it's probably worth revisiting maybe some of his stuff. Do you have any particular thing of his that you were like, oh, this really resonated? Was it a book or a recording or something?
Um, I mean, all of it's gold, pure gold. But a beginner level, if someone has not heard of Neville Goddard, and first book that I would have someone read would be Feeling is the Secret and Power of Awareness. These are two great starter books. But of course, where I feel the most power and wisdom comes from is his lectures. They're
Okay.
described word for word with what he spoke up on that stage. And there's something just very powerful about that versus reading the books, even though both are gems. I love the lectures.
Well, I think it's because he would have a frequency that's probably attached that you would feel that you wouldn't necessarily feel in a printed book.
Yeah, yeah. And he shared his own experiences and his audience's experiences. So it was very profound.
So I would imagine at this point in time, and probably before that, people have probably fast forwarded through stuff because they're like, how do I find her? So how can people connect with you, Lisa? What are you doing in the world? What do you want us to know?
I am a transformational mindset coach. I help hold people accountable to applying the law of assumption, to really going within and understanding their own power. It's not that, I'm this great person and is more powerful than another, but what I do is just inspire another to remember who they are, to remember that they are the power. And I walk people through this in one-on-one sessions. I also hold groups on Facebook platform where I'm currently running a 90-day challenge of revision, revising our past, seeing it differently. So you could find me at lisaeverhart.com, Lisa Everhart on Facebook, and then I also have a YouTube channel, Account for Your Ability 22, or you can also Google my name or YouTube my name, Lisa Everhart.
Okay, I'll put all of that in the show notes so that people can connect you and can find you. Lisa, this has been just the highlight of my day. I have loved hearing everything that you talked about. It's so many confirmations, things that we already know. You know, you think you're doing a good job, and then you hear it from a different perspective, and you're like, I've got some stuff to go back and work on. So thank you for that. And I want to thank you so much for what you are helping to do to wake up the collective consciousness. It is so needed right now.
Well, thank you so very much for having me here today. I've enjoyed speaking with you, truly.
Thank you. And of course, the show is absolutely nothing without all the people who tune in to watch. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.